Well, hey, I'm Dr. Hagmeyer, and if you're watching this video, chances are you or someone you love is struggling with histamine intolerance or MCAS, mast cell activation syndrome. Maybe you've been on a low histamine diet, you've tried all the supplements that are out there, and you feel like you're reacting to just about everything, yet you're still looking for answers. Well, today, I want to share with you 17 of the most important things that I wish every single patient who had histamine intolerance and MCAS that they truly understood. This is not going to be in any specific order, but these are things that I've learned from years of helping patients heal from chronic inflammation, food sensitivities, gut issues, and again, this histamine overload. So let's dive into this. And again, remember, this is not in any one particular order. So the first thing I want you to know is that histamine intolerance is deeply connected to your gut. And that means that your histamine intolerance symptoms, whether they're hives, anxiety, headaches, or fatigue, actually start in your gut microbiome, your intestinal lining, or even in your enzyme function. Number two is that gut problems are often the root, but not the entire story. Yes, things like SIBO, dysbiosis, leaky gut, irritable bowel syndrome, food sensitivities, they're all major contributors to histamine intolerance and MCAS, but they're not the whole picture. Hormonal imbalances, genetic SNPs, mold, chronic infections, stress, and even environmental toxins also play a role. So a low histamine diet and supplements like quercetin and vitamin C and DAO enzymes can reduce the symptoms short term, but unless you address the underlying imbalances like poor detoxification, gut inflammation, food allergies, food sensitivities, this immune system dysregulation, all you're doing is really chasing symptoms naturally. Now, in past videos, I've talked about this histamine bucket. To fix the histamine problem, you need to know what's filling up your histamine bucket and why your bucket is not draining. Healing requires a multifaceted root cause approach. There is no one singular thing that's going to fix that. So number four is healing starts in the gut. If you want to heal from histamine intolerance or MCAS, you have to heal your gut. And that means identifying hidden infections, reducing inflammation, restoring your gut lining, rebuilding healthy bacterial balance. This can only be done with testing. You have to test in order to identify the problem. You have to receive treatment and you have to retest to see how your treatment is going. This is not about buying someone's 30-day histamine reset program. You're not fixing anything in 30 days. That's so important. So gut symptoms aren't always obvious when you have histamine intolerance. You don't need to have bloating, diarrhea, or constipation to have a gut problem. This is such a huge misunderstanding when it comes to histamine intolerance. Some people only experience skin rashes or migraines or anxiety or a rapid heartbeat. But these, again, can be traced back to gut imbalances. Let's talk about DAO, diamine oxidase. That's the enzyme in your gut that breaks down histamine in the food that you eat. When DA levels are low, even healthy foods can trigger symptoms like the itching, the brain fog, and the insomnia. So using DAO is an important tool. Talking about the gut, the microvilli, those finger-like projections in your intestines, they produce DAO. But if you've got chronic intestinal inflammation, those delicate cells become damaged and reducing the ability to break down histamine because they can't produce that enzyme. So very important, again, to heal the gut. All right, so since I'm on the topic of the gut, let's talk about some of the top triggers for gut inflammation. These are going to be things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, celiac disease, inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, celiac, infections with H. pylori, C. diff, or other types of pathogenic bacteria, food allergies, food sensitivities, and overgrowth of commensal bacteria, and the loss of gut barrier integrity known as a leaky gut. All of these things increase your vulnerability to histamine intolerance as well as MCAS. Now, if we want to talk about genetics, genetic influence on DAO enzyme and DAO function is also important. Some people are born with genetic mutations that inherently reduce their DAO enzyme activity. And if that's you, maybe you're more sensitive to food and environmental triggers. That wouldn't bother someone else. The good news is, even with those genetics, your environment and your lifestyle still have powerful influence over your health. Remember, genes are not your destiny. All right, so while we're talking about histamine, remember, mast cells release histamine as part of the immune system defense, but gut inflammation and microbial or microbiome disruption can make these mast cells hyperreactive, and which in turn floods the system with histamine, tryptase, and some of these other inflammatory mediators. So for some people, it's this double whammy, right? You've now got problems where you've got lower DAO levels, meaning that histamine can't be properly broken down or metabolized, And you have an increase in mast cell activation, meaning higher levels of histamine release. And so you can imagine it's no wonder why this bucket begins to overflow and really spiral out of control. So you have to deal with these issues together. So another twist to this whole picture here is that certain gut bacteria, especially many of the types and varieties that cause SIBO or large intestinal dysbiosis, can actually produce histamine themselves. So if these strains are overgrowing in your gut, your histamine load increases dramatically, even if you're not eating high histamine foods. And this is why so many people, when they go on a low histamine diet and they say, well, the low histamine diet didn't work, because again, it's not just about the diet. The types of bacteria in your gut are capable of producing histamine, and this in turn can fill up the histamine bucket. A lot of people with histamine intolerance are first told they have irritable bowel syndrome, right? And while irritable bowel syndrome is real, it's often just a label of many unexplained symptoms. For many, it's a sign that there are deeper issues like the MCAS, like histamine overload, or even like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. But for years and years and years, traditional medicine hasn't looked beyond just the symptoms and just puts the label on the patient, rather than saying, hey, this is the reason you have IBS, or this is the reason why you have SIBO. Now, for many of you that are out there, maybe you're watching this and you have been diagnosed with IBS. You might have noticed that you feel worse after eating aged cheese, wine, leftovers, fermented foods. Again, these are foods that are high in histamine, and they can worsen your gut symptoms. They can worsen your anxiety. They can worsen your fatigue, especially in people with histamine intolerance and MCAS. Now, here's the thing. Research has shown that patients who have IBS often have more mast cells in their gut lining that release the histamine. And that it could explain the symptoms of bloating and urgency or even abdominal pain, especially after eating. So again, you have to realize that there is that possible connection. So if you're dealing with SIBO, IBS, histamine intolerance, diets like low FODMAP, low histamine, and even paleo AIP can help calm the fire. But most likely you're going to also need to avoid alcohol, fermented foods, leftovers, coffee, processed meats, at least during the initial healing phase. I was on the phone with a patient this morning. Patient said every morning he's got to go to Dunkin' Donuts and get his iced coffee, and asked me if he can continue doing that. And the answer is no, you can't continue doing that. You can't keep poisoning your gut with alcohol or things that drive irritation. So let's talk a little bit about supplements for a moment. Certain supplements can obviously be very helpful. These are going to be things like DAO, enzymes. These are going to be things like quercetin, a natural mast cell stabilizer, things like vitamin C, something like perilla extract, certain probiotics that help degrade histamine, methylation support, making sure that your B12 levels are optimal, your folate levels are optimal. But again, it's important to tailor this protocol to your particular case. And that's why it's important that you work with a functional medicine doctor. Just to recap, a real quick recap here, the gut is the foundation. DAO and mast cells play huge roles. Diet is helpful, but again, it's not the whole solution. Healing has to take a root cause, personalized approach. If you're struggling with unpredictable reactions, fatigue, itching, gut symptoms, don't give up, because you're not crazy. There's an explanation as to why this is happening. And there is a path forward. If you're looking for that next step, I'd love to help figure out what's wrong with you and how we can support you. Visit my website, book a free 15-minute phone consult, and let's see what's really going on beneath the surface. Well, I'm Dr. Hagmeyer. I want to thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you in the next one. There'll be one either up in this corner here or in this corner here as well. Again, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.